You are absolutely certain of who you are. You think you know your name, your story, your preferences, your wounds. You wake up every morning convinced you're the same person who went to bed last night. But let me ask you a question you've probably never considered. What if all of that were a lie? What if the person you think you are doesn't actually exist? I'm not talking about abstract philosophy or mind games. I'm talking about the most elaborate trap your mind has ever built, your identity. That thing you defend tooth and nail, that narrative you repeat until you convince yourself it's real, that collection of labels you carry as if they were medals. All of that, absolutely all of it, is an illusion. And the most disturbing part is that you've spent your entire life building it. Think about this. Who are you when no one is watching? Who are you when you don't have to prove anything? Are you still the successful one, the failure, the smart one, the misunderstood one? The answer will scare you, because when you peel back the layers, when you stop acting out the character, what remains is a terrifying emptiness. And that emptiness is precisely what your ego has spent decades trying to fill. Every title you've chased, every achievement you've collected, every relationship you've held onto, everything has been fuel to keep the illusion alive that you know who you are. But the truth is much simpler and much more brutal. You don't know, you never have. And most of your suffering comes exactly from that, from trying to hold together something that was never real in the first place. Your identity is a mental construct, nothing more. It's a story you tell yourself so you don't have to face the present as it is. Every time you say, "I'm like this," you close a door. Every time you cling to a version of yourself, you limit what you can become. And here's the irony. You fight to maintain that identity because you think that without it you're nothing. But the reality is exactly the opposite. Without that identity, without the heavy burden of who you think you must be, you could finally experience what it means to exist without resistance. But of course, that requires something very few are willing to do: letting go. Most people spend their entire lives defending a fiction. They get offended when someone questions their narrative. They fall apart when something threatens the image they've built. Why? Because without that identity, they feel they would disappear. The ego sells them the lie that they are their thoughts, their emotions, their past experiences. And that's where the prison begins. When you identify with your story, when you confuse what happened to you with who you are, you become trapped in an endless loop. You constantly relive the past, turn it into your present, and thus guarantee that your future will be exactly the same. It's a perfect cycle of self-imposed suffering. Here's something. No one has told you the person you were 10 years ago no longer exists. The cells in your body have regenerated, your thoughts have changed, your circumstances are different. So why are you still carrying that version of yourself? Why do you keep repeating the same story as if it were a life sentence? Because your ego needs continuity. It needs to believe there is a solid, permanent, consistent you. But that is a lie. The only thing consistent is change, and the only thing permanent is the consciousness that observes that change. That consciousness has no name, no story, no identity. It simply is. And that is the closest you will ever come to the truth. The problem is that society is designed to reinforce this illusion. Since you were born, you've been asked, "What do you want to be?" As if being were something you choose, as if you could become anything other than what you already are. They told you to find your purpose, build a career, make a name for yourself, and you obeyed. You spent years accumulating achievements, titles, possessions, all to strengthen the feeling of being someone. But deep down there is always a void, a space that never fully fills, because you're trying to fill something that doesn't exist with things that aren't real either. Your identity feeds on your thoughts, and your thoughts are mostly recycled garbage. They are repetitive patterns, inherited fears, learned judgments. 90% of what you think today is exactly what you thought yesterday and exactly what you'll think tomorrow. There is nothing original there, nothing truly yours. They're automatic programs running in the background, and you think those programs are you. That is the trap. You identify with the mental noise, with the constant chatter that never stops, and you assume that the voice in your head is who you really are. But that voice is not you. It's the ego speaking, inventing problems, creating drama, ensuring you never find peace. Let me ask you something even more uncomfortable. How many of your decisions are actually yours? How many times have you chosen something because you genuinely wanted it, not because it matched the image you have of yourself? Think carefully. Did you choose that career because it truly excited you, or because it matched who you believed you were supposed to be? Did you stay in that relationship because it truly made you happy, or because letting go meant admitting you were wrong? Are you still at that job because it fulfills you, or because quitting would mean accepting you are not who you said you would become? You see the pattern. You're not living your life, you're playing a role. And the director of that play is your ego, the invisible puppeteer that keeps you dancing to a song you never chose. Identity is the most sophisticated form of slavery because it convinces you that you're free. You think you're the one deciding, but in reality, you are chained to an image, to a narrative, to a set of expectations you've internalized so deeply you no longer question them. And every time something threatens that image, you react. You don't respond, you react. Because when your identity is at stake, the ego goes into survival mode. It defends, attacks, justifies, whatever it takes to keep the illusion intact. That's why the most intense arguments are not about facts, they are about identities. When someone questions your opinion, it's not the opinion you defend, it's the version of yourself that the opinion supports. Here's the part that truly hurts. All the suffering you carry, all those wounds that don't heal, all those stories you can't let go of, exist because you identify with them. You are not your wounds, but you've turned them into part of your identity. I am someone who was betrayed. I am someone who wasn't loved. I am someone who always fails. You take events from the past and turn them into a permanent definition of who you are. And as long as you do that, as long as you hold on to those labels, you will keep recreating the same situations. Because the ego needs to be right more than it needs to be happy. It prefers familiar suffering over unknown peace. Most people never escape this prison because they don't even know they're in it. They believe the cage is their home. They've grown so used to the bars that they no longer see them. And when someone points out they are trapped, they get offended. They defend their chains as if they were jewels. Because admitting that your identity is a construction means admitting you've been living a lie. And that is too much for most people. They prefer the comfort of a familiar illusion to the vertigo of an unknown truth. But there is a way out, though not the one you expect. It's not about building a better identity, one that's more authentic or evolved. It's about seeing through all identities, recognizing that none of them are real. It's not about finding yourself, it's about realizing there was never a you to find. There is only consciousness, presence, the eternal now. Everything else is mental theater. When you begin to observe your thoughts instead of identifying with them, something shifts. You are no longer the character in the story. You are the awareness watching the story. And from that place, the drama loses its power. The emotions are still there, the thoughts still appear, but they no longer drag you with them. Because you've seen the truth, you are none of that. You are the space in which all of that occurs, and that space cannot be hurt, cannot be threatened, cannot be destroyed. It simply is, eternally present, eternally at peace. Here's what the ego doesn't want you to know. You do not need an identity to exist. In fact, existing fully is only possible when you let go of all identities. When you stop trying to be someone, you can finally just be. Not be something specific, just be. And in that formless, limitless, undefined being, you find a freedom no identity could ever offer. Because freedom is not found in becoming who you want to be, but in letting go of the belief that you are someone in the first place. But this isn't easy. The ego will resist. It will throw all its tricks, all its fears, all its justifications at you. It will tell you that without an identity you are lost, that without a story you are nothing, that without your accomplishments you have no worth. This is its final line of defense, and if you fall for that trap, you will return to the prison. Because the ego is cunning, it can even turn spiritual seeking into another identity. I am someone who is awake. I am someone who understands the truth. I am someone who is superior to those who still sleep. And there you are again, trapped in another version of the same lie. True freedom arrives when you stop searching, when you realize there is nothing to achieve, no one to become, nowhere to go. There is only this moment, exactly as it is, and you, or rather the consciousness you truly are already here. You always have been. The problem is that you've been so busy building and defending your identity that you've missed the only real thing, the present. Every time you find yourself suffering, look at what identity you're defending. Every time you feel resistance, ask yourself what version of you is being threatened, and then let go. Not because it's easy, but because it's the only way out. Identity is a weight you never needed to carry. It is armor you never required. It is a story that was never true. And when you finally allow it to crumble, when you let every mask fall, what you discover is not the terrifying nothingness you feared, but a fullness you never imagined possible. Here is the final paradox. When you stop trying to be someone, you become everything. When you let go of your personal identity, you merge with existence itself. There is no longer separation between you and life, no longer conflict between what you are and what you think you should be. There is only what is, perfectly imperfect, eternally present. So, who are you really? You are not your name, you are not your story, you are not your thoughts or emotions, you are not your achievements or your failures, you are not your roles or relationships. All of that comes and goes, appears and disappears, but there is something in you that never changes, something that has been present from your first memory to this exact moment. That conscious presence, that silent witness, is the closest to what you truly are, and it needs no identity, no definition, nothing. It simply is. The question isn't who you are, the question is, are you ready to stop pretending you know? Because the moment you let go of that need to know, the moment you stop clinging to any identity, something extraordinary happens. Life stops being a struggle. The present stops being a threat. Existence becomes what it has always been, a miracle witnessing itself through countless forms. But the ego doesn't give up easily. You'll read these words and it will try to turn them into another identity. Now, I'm someone who understands that identity is an illusion, and there it is again, the trap. This is not about intellectual understanding, it's about direct seeing, not with the eyes or the mind, but with that pure awareness that comes before thought, before interpretation, before story. Every moment offers the opportunity to awaken from this dream. Every breath is an invitation to let go. Every thought you observe without believing it is a step toward freedom. You don't need years of meditation or retreats in the Himalayas. You just need to be present, completely present, with what is, without judging it, without resisting it, without trying to change it, simply allowing it to be. And when you finally do, when you let all identities dissolve into the nothingness they came from, you won't find the terrifying emptiness you feared. You'll find peace, a peace that doesn't depend on circumstances, doesn't need reasons, and cannot be disturbed by anything, because it's not someone's peace, it is the peace of being itself. So I'll ask you one last time, who are you? And this time, before answering, before searching your mind for a definition, a story, a label, stop, just stop. And in that silence, in that space before the answer, there is the truth, not as an idea or concept, but as a direct, undeniable, liberating experience. There, where there is no one to be, that is where you finally are. If this video stirred something in you, if you felt that vertigo that comes right before waking up, then you already know what you need to do. This channel isn't for those seeking cheap motivation or inspirational quotes that fade in 2 hours. This is for those who are sick of living asleep, for those who prefer uncomfortable truth over comforting lies. Subscribe if you're willing to question everything you thought you knew about yourself, because here we're not going to feed your ego. We're going to dismantle it piece by piece until all that remains is what's real. And be warned, once you begin to see, there is no turning back. Awakening is not a state of constant happiness, it is the end of illusion. So if you're ready to stop acting and start being, press that button. This is only the beginning.